I was always the family disappointment. That was the unspoken truth hanging between us at every gathering. While my sister Catherine collected trophies and praise, I collected sidelong glances and sighs. When my grandfather Walter passed away last month, I lost the only person who ever truly saw me. Now, sitting in this mahogany-lined attorney's office, I watch my parents beam as the lawyer announces Catherine's inheritance, $6.9 million. Their laughter echoes as they turn to me. Dad slides a single-dollar bill across the table with a smirk. Go earn your own, Norman. Some kids just don't measure up. I feel the room spin, but what nobody knows is that Grandpa Walter left me one more thing. Let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe, because what happened next changed everything. My childhood in our Connecticut suburb looked perfect from the outside. Our sprawling colonial house sat behind manicured hedges, a monument to my parents' success. Dad dominated the investment banking world with ruthless efficiency, while Mom saved lives as one of the state's top neurosurgeons. They were a power couple in every sense, and they expected nothing less than excellence from their children. Catherine delivered. 3 years older than me, she seemed genetically programmed for success. Perfect grade swim team captain debate champion, she collected achievements like some kids collected baseball cards. Our parents beamed at every award ceremony, every acceptance letter, every milestone. Catherine's room became a shrine to achievement. Trophies lining custom shelves, framed certificates covering walls. My room had posters of bands and sketches I'd drawn, not quite the family aesthetic. It wasn't that I didn't try. I remember being 8 years old, bringing home an art contest win my watercolor landscape, chosen from hundreds of submissions. Mom glanced at it and said, "That's nice, Norman. Did you finish your math worksheets?" Dad didn't even look up from his Wall Street Journal. The same week, Catherine received early admission to a prestigious summer program. They took the whole family out for a celebration dinner. Our family fortune originated with my grandfather Walter, who built a shipping empire from nothing but grit and vision. He started with one small boat transporting goods along the East Coast in the 1,960 seconds and expanded into an international operation. By the time I was born, he was semi-retired, leaving the business operations to trusted executives while maintaining ownership and board oversight. When I turned 10, Walter started inviting me to his lake house on weekends. Those became my sanctuary. While Catherine was attending competitive academic camps or training for championships, I was sitting on Walter's dock, learning to tie nautical knots or hearing stories about countries I'd never seen. "You've got the eyes of an innovator, Norman," he told me once, as we worked together repairing an old boat motor. "You don't just see what is, you see what could be." My teenage years only widened the gap between my parents' expectations and who I actually was. I tried sports, failed miserably, tried debate, stuttered through competitions, tried focusing solely on academics, managed only B's, while Catherine collected early college credits. By 16, I'd given up trying to be Catherine. Instead, I leaned into what I loved, designing things, solving mechanical problems, dreaming up business ideas that combined technology and practicality. I converted our garden shed into a workshop, spending hours there developing prototypes for inventions. Norman's off playing in his shed again. My father would announce at dinner, the disappointment heavy in his voice. "It's just a phase," my mother would reply, as if my passion was a disease I'd eventually recover from. Meanwhile, Catherine graduated summa cum laude from an Ivy League university and headed straight to a top-tier law school, on track to become the youngest partner at Dad's friend's prestigious firm. Grandpa Walter, though, would visit my shed workshop. He'd examine my sketches, ask thoughtful questions, challenge my thinking. "Tell me more about this design," he'd say, pointing to a shipping container modification I'd drawn. "Have you considered the loading efficiency on standard docks?" I didn't realize then that Walter wasn't just being kind. He was evaluating my ideas with his decades of shipping industry expertise. When I turned 22, I moved out. I couldn't breathe in that house anymore, constantly measured against Catherine's shadow, and found wanting. I found a tiny apartment on the unfashionable side of town and took whatever jobs I could find, barista, rideshare driver, handyman, while continuing to develop my ideas at night. My parents' support stopped almost entirely. Real-world consequences, my father called it. Catherine, meanwhile, received a luxury condo as a law school graduation gift. The only family member who still believed in me was Grandpa Walter. He visited my cramped apartment, never commenting on the size or neighborhood. Instead, he'd sit at my small kitchen table, look over my newest designs, and offer insights. Sometimes, he'd leave with copies of my sketches, saying he wanted to think about them more. When Walter fell ill 6 months ago, I visited him every day in the hospital. Catherine came twice too busy with her rising career. My parents coordinated care, but were often traveling. Norman Walter said to me one afternoon, his voice weaker, but his eyes sharp as ever, "Promise me you'll never stop inventing, never stop seeing possibilities." I promised. 3 weeks later, he was gone. Which brings me to the will reading. The family attorney, Mr. Harrington, a thin man, with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, called us all together just 1 month after the funeral. Walter's estate was substantial, everyone knew that, but the details had been kept surprisingly private. We gathered in the downtown law office on a Tuesday morning. The conference room screamed old money, dark wood paneling, oil paintings of stern-looking men, leather chairs that cost more than my monthly rent. Catherine arrived in a tailored suit, hair perfect, exuding confidence. My parents sat beside her, a united front of success. I sat alone across the table in the only suit I owned, bought 3 years ago for a cousin's wedding. I felt like an imposter. The black sheep, the disappointment. Mr. Harrington cleared his throat and began reading. There were charitable donations, provisions for longtime employees, and specific bequests of heirlooms and properties. Then came the main event. To my granddaughter, Catherine, I leave the sum of $6.9 million. Catherine didn't flinch. She'd expected no less. My parents exchanged proud glances, my father actually chuckling as he patted Catherine's shoulder. "Well deserved," he whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. Mr. Harrington continued, "To my grandson, Norman." The room seemed to still. My mouth went dry. Maybe, just maybe, Walter had seen something in me worth recognizing. I leave the sum of $1. My father snorted, then broke into open laughter. My mother covered her mouth, but couldn't hide her smirk. Catherine had the decency to look down at her manicured nails. Additionally, the attorney continued, but my father interrupted by reaching into his wallet, extracting a crisp $1 bill, and sliding it across the polished table toward me. "Go earn your own, Norman," he said, not bothering to hide his amusement. Some kids just don't measure up. The rest of the reading passed in a blur. All I could focus on was that single dollar bill sitting in front of me like a verdict. Had I misunderstood my relationship with my grandfather? Had those hours in his workshop, those conversations, those moments of connection meant nothing? I excused myself to the bathroom, locked the door, and tried to breathe. In the mirror, I saw a 28-year-old failure, just like my father always said. I splashed cold water on my face and told myself to hold it together just until I could escape this place. In the hallway, I overheard my mother talking to a cousin. Walter was always practical, she was saying. He knew Norman would just waste anything substantial. The boy has no direction. The drive home to my apartment was the longest 20 minutes of my life. My phone pinged with a text from Catherine. "Sorry about today. Let me know if you need anything." The hollow sympathy felt worse than nothing. My apartment seemed smaller than ever. That night, the walls closing in. I couldn't sleep, replaying every moment with my grandfather, wondering if I'd imagined the connection, the support, the belief I thought I'd seen in his eyes. The next morning my phone rang. It was Mr. Harrington. Mr. Norman there. Seems to be something I overlooked yesterday. Your grandfather left a sealed envelope with specific instructions that it be given to you privately after the official reading. Could you come to the office today? An hour later, I sat in the same conference room, now empty, except for Mr. Harrington and myself. He handed me a sealed envelope, thick and heavy, with my name written in Walter's distinctive handwriting. Your grandfather was a remarkable man, Mr. Harrington said, an odd expression on his face. He asked that you read this alone. I took the envelope to my car, hands shaking slightly as I broke the seal. Inside was a letter and a small key taped to the corner of the page. Norman. The letter began in my grandfather's handwriting. If you're reading this, then the will reading has occurred, as I planned. Yes, planned. The $1 was deliberate, not because you don't deserve more, but because I wanted to protect what I'm actually giving you. I stopped reading, confused. The letter continued, I've watched you grow into a young man with extraordinary vision. What you've never known is that over the years, I've been documenting, developing, and patenting the best of your ideas. Remember those sketches I'd take home to think about? I was taking them to the best patent attorneys and engineers to refine and protect them. My heart pounded as I read on. Your parents and sister never understood your brilliance because it didn't fit their narrow definition of success. I played along, letting them think I merely tolerated your hobby. In truth, I recognized that you inherited something far more valuable than ambition. You inherited innovation. The key, Walter explained, opened a storage unit containing everything: the patents, the prototypes, the legal documentation, all registered in my name, all legally binding. The $1 inheritance was to keep the others from becoming suspicious. If they knew what I've really left you, intellectual property potentially worth billions, they would fight you for control. This way, they'll write you off until it's too late. The letter ended with an address and storage unit number. I drove to the industrial district on the outskirts of town, my grandfather's letter burning a hole in my pocket. The storage facility looked unremarkable from the outside, just rows of identical units behind a chain-link fence. Nothing about it suggested it might contain something valuable. Unit 247 was toward the back, away from the road. My hands trembled slightly as I inserted the key and lifted the rolling door. Inside was nothing like a typical storage unit filled with forgotten furniture or boxed-up memories. This was a climate-controlled space that looked more like a professional archive. Floor-to-ceiling metal, shelving units lined the walls, each filled with neatly labeled document boxes. In the center stood a large table with what appeared to be prototype models covered in protective casings. I approached the nearest shelf and pulled out a binder labeled Container Locking Mechanism 2016. Inside were detailed technical drawings, evolved versions of a design I'd sketched when I was 19. I recognized my original concept, but could see how it had been professionally refined and developed. Attached was a patent certificate with my name listed as the inventor. Box after box revealed the same pattern my rough ideas transformed into patentable innovations, all documented, all legally protected, all in my name. Shipping container, security systems, loading efficiency mechanisms, tracking technology that could revolutionize global logistics. On the table was a laptop with a sticky note. Play me. I opened it, and a video file was ready to play. I clicked, and suddenly, my grandfather's face filled the screen. Hello, Norman. Walter began looking healthier than he had in his final months. If you're watching this, then everything has gone according to plan. I recorded this about 6 months before my diagnosis just to be safe. He explained how he'd recognized my potential from an early age, my ability to see problems differently and imagine practical solutions. Your parents wanted another Catherine. I knew you were something different, something potentially more valuable. Catherine will succeed within the system. You have the potential to change the system itself. Walter detailed how he had secretly been testing and developing my ideas for years. The casual questions he'd asked during our visits were actually probing for specific details he needed. The interest he showed in my sketches was genuine evaluation from someone who understood the shipping industry intimately. What started as a grandfather's pride became something more serious when I realized just how innovative your ideas were. The container locking system you sketched at 19, it solves a problem that's plagued the industry for decades. The tracking integration you described last year, it could save billions in lost cargo. He'd assembled a team of engineers, patent attorneys, and industry experts, all operating under strict non-disclosure agreements to refine and protect my intellectual property. Everything was registered with me as the inventor and owner. The patents alone are worth millions, Norman. But properly licensed and implemented, we're talking potential billions over time. I've arranged everything so you maintain complete control. Walter's face grew more serious. Now about your family. They'll be angry, they'll feel cheated, they'll try to claim I wasn't in my right mind or that you manipulated me. That's why I've been documenting everything meticulously for years with multiple witnesses and medical evaluations of my mental state. It's all ironclad. He leaned closer to the camera. One last thing. Yesterday, before my health declined, the board of Walter Shipping voted unanimously to license all these technologies exclusively through whatever company structure you choose to create. It's in the documents on the center shelf. They know these innovations will keep the company competitive for decades. Even your father as a minor shareholder voted for it, though he had no idea the innovations came from you. Walter smiled then, the same smile I remembered from our workshop days. You once told me you felt invisible in your own family. Now you have the choice. Stay invisible until you're ready, or show them exactly who you are. The video ended. I sat in stunned silence, surrounded by evidence of my grandfather's belief in me, a belief so strong he'd spent years and considerable resources protecting it from my own family. After hours of examining documents, I finally understood the full scope of Walter's gift. This wasn't just money. This was opportunity validation and protection all wrapped into one masterful plan. I decided it was time for a family meeting. The next day, I called my parents and asked to meet at their house. They sounded surprised. I rarely initiated family gatherings, but agreed, probably expecting me to ask for money after the will's disappointment. Catherine arrived first, her expensive car pulling into the driveway just before I parked my 10-year-old sedan. She offered a practiced, sympathetic smile. "Norman, how are you holding up?" she asked, her voice dripping with the condescension of someone who'd just received millions while I got $1. "I'm managing," I replied, giving nothing away. My parents welcomed me with the distracted tolerance they always showed. Mom offered coffee, while Dad checked his watch repeatedly, making it clear my presence was consuming valuable time. "So Norman," my father began, once we were all seated in their formal living room, "what's this meeting about? Need help with rent after yesterday's outcome?" The smug certainty in his voice cemented my resolve. "Actually, I wanted to discuss Grandpa Walter's legacy," I said calmly. "That's been settled legally," my mother replied quickly. "I know it seems unfair, but Walter knew what he was doing." "He absolutely did." I agreed, opening the briefcase I'd brought. He knew exactly what he was doing. I began by placing one document on the coffee table, a patent certificate with my name, clearly listed as the inventor. "What's this?" my father asked, frowning as he picked it up. "One of 27 patents Grandpa Walter helped me secure over the last 8 years," I said. "That particular one is for a container locking system that prevents theft during transit. Industry experts value it at approximately $40 million. The room went silent. Catherine reached for the document, her legal training kicking in as she scanned for loopholes or mistakes. "This must be some kind of joke," my father finally said, "or forgery." In response, I placed the next document on the table, the minutes from the Walter Shipping Board meeting, showing the unanimous vote to license all technologies exclusively through my newly established company. "You were there, Dad. You voted for it. You just didn't know the patents were mine." My father's face reddened as he snatched up the paper. "This is impossible. Walter would never." "Walter," I interrupted, my voice steady. "He recognized something in me that you never bothered to see." One by one, I laid out the evidence, the patents, the valuations, the legal structures Walter had created. Catherine's legal expertise worked against her as she realized document by document that everything was legitimate and binding. "This can't be right," my mother protested weakly. "You got $1. Publicly, yes," I explained. "To keep you all from contesting what he really left me, control of innovations worth potentially billions." The final document I presented was the licensing agreement between Walter Shipping and my new company, Norman Innovations. The minimum guaranteed payments alone would make me wealthier than Catherine's inheritance within 5 years. My father's face had moved from red to purple. "We'll contest this. Walter wasn't thinking clearly. You manipulated him. Multiple doctors certified his mental competence. 10 witnesses confirmed his intentions. 3 separate law firms vetted every document I said, reciting facts from Walter's preparations. It's ironclad." Catherine, always the strategist, was already shifting her approach. Her expression softened as she moved to sit beside me. "Norman, this is amazing," she said, touching my arm. "I always knew you were creative. We should discuss how to approach this as a family. Perhaps I could help with the legal aspects, and Dad could advise on business strategy." I gently removed her hand. "Thank you, but I've retained my own legal team and business advisors." Walter was very thorough in his recommendations. My father switched tactics, his banker's mind calculating angles. "Son, we're family. We should work together on this. Your mother and I have connections experience. The same experience that led you to slide a single dollar across the table and tell me I don't measure up." I asked quietly. The room fell silent. "Walter believed in me," I continued. "He saw value in how my mind works. He's given me everything I need to succeed without your connections or your approval." I stood to leave, gathering my documents. "I'm establishing the Walter Foundation next month, focused on supporting young innovators from unconventional backgrounds. You'll all receive invitations to the launch event as family." As I reached the door, my father called out, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. "Norman, wait. We should talk about this more." I turned back. "For years, all I wanted was for you to talk to me. Really talk to me. See me. Now it's too late for that. But we can build something new based on mutual respect. That starts with you understanding that I'm not asking for your help or approval anymore." I walked out, closing the door softly behind me. The year that followed transformed everything. Norman Innovations moved into modest offices, nothing flashy, just functional space where creativity could flourish. I assembled a team based not on prestigious degrees, but on innovative thinking and collaborative spirit. The temptation to become vindictive was strong at first. Part of me wanted to flaunt my success, to reject my family completely, to become as coldly calculating as they had been. But each time that impulse arose, I remembered conversations with Walter on his dock, his gentle wisdom about what really mattered. "Wealth without purpose is just numbers on paper," Norman he'd told me once. "The measure of success isn't what you accumulate, but what you contribute." The Walter Foundation became my passion project. We provided grants, mentorship, and resources to young inventors whose thinking didn't fit conventional molds. People like me who saw the world differently. Our first cohort included a 17-year-old girl whose ocean plastic reclamation system showed remarkable promise, and a 20-year-old college dropout whose sustainable housing designs could revolutionize affordable living. My parents made several attempts to reconcile, which really meant trying to insert themselves into my business operations. I maintained polite but firm boundaries, accepting holiday invitations but deflecting business discussions. Catherine's approach was more subtle. As a corporate attorney, she recognized the value of what I controlled and positioned herself as a supportive sister who had always believed in me. I remained cordial, but kept her at arm's length professionally. 6 months in our first major licensing deals were implemented across Walter Shipping's fleet. The efficiency improvements were immediate and substantial. Industry publications began mentioning Norman Innovations as a rising force in shipping technology. Competitors approached with licensing offers. Throughout it all, I kept Walter's letter in my desk drawer, reading it whenever doubt crept in. His belief in me had been the foundation upon which I finally built belief in myself. On the 1-year anniversary of Walter's passing, I visited his grave alone. The family had planned an elaborate memorial service, but I wanted this private moment first. You changed everything, I told him, placing a single white rose on his headstone, not just with what you left me, but with how you saw me all along. That evening, at a major industry conference, I encountered Catherine near the bar. She looked different somehow, less perfectly polished, more human. "Congratulations on the oceanic deal," she said, referring to our latest major licensing agreement. Dad nearly burst a blood vessel when he heard the terms. I laughed, despite myself. "Norman," she continued, her voice lower, more genuine than I'd heard in years. "I've been thinking a lot about how we grew up, how different the expectations were. I didn't see it then. I was too busy enjoying being the golden child." I studied her face, searching for the usual calculation, but found something closer to regret. I've been wondering who I might have become if I hadn't been handed everything, she added. "If I'd had to find my own way like you did." It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was the most honest conversation we'd had as adults. As I drove home that night, I thought about success and what it really means. My parents had defined it by titles, accounts, and addresses. Walter had seen it differently, as innovation, contribution, and character. The true inheritance Walter left wasn't patents or money or even opportunity. It was the validation that being different wasn't being less, that seeing the world uniquely wasn't a weakness but a strength, that the measure of a person isn't in comparison to others, but in the integrity of their own vision. I keep that dollar bill from the will reading framed in my office now, not as a reminder of rejection, but as a symbol of what came after, the moment when being underestimated became my greatest advantage. Have you ever been underestimated by the people who should have believed in you most? How did you respond? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life journeys of overcoming family expectations. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that their unique way of thinking is their superpower. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the people who are supposed to see your worth won't, but that doesn't determine what you're truly capable of.